The COVID-19 vaccine. Should you get it or not? Coming up, I've got an interview that you don't want to miss.
All right, I'm Dr. Kiana Washington. I am a pediatrician in private practice in Beaufort, Georgia. It's a suburb of Atlanta. I've been in private practice for 10 years, and I see children of all ages from newborns up to age 20. And I love the work that I do, and it's been very rewarding.
Now, we've heard a lot of talk about the vaccine over the past couple of days. My question to you is, now, when this vaccine comes out, it shows up at my doctor's office or the pharmacy, should I be in line to go get that, and why?
Yes, so I am a proponent of getting the vaccine. I think at this point, it is a choice, not of should I get the vaccine or should I not get the vaccine. The question you have to ask yourself is, do I want to get the vaccine or do I want to get COVID? Because that's where we are. We are several months into this. We see how contagious this virus is. We see how unpredictable this virus is. And we have seen that there are some people that can get it and they do just fine, and someone else gets it and they do not do well at all, or they die. And it can be quite unpredictable. So at this point, we are making a decision of what type of risk you want to take. Everyone has their own level of risk tolerance. Even in the same household, you can have people with different levels of risk tolerance. So what type of risk do you want to take? Do you want to risk contracting the virus and getting COVID and risk the complications that come with that? Or do you want to get the vaccine?
I know some people may feel like this was rushed, like, oh, this looked like they just kind of threw this together at the last minute to try to fight this, but that's not actually the case.
No, it is not. So I think what the interesting thing about watching this play out on the news over the past several months is that vaccine development never plays out in public this way. It's never publicly scrutinized and every single step is watched by mass media. But because of the situation we are in with this pandemic and because of how social we are and how much we consume media these days, we've watched every single step of these vaccine trials. I think it's important for people to recognize that what you have been looking at has been the vaccine trials. The vaccine development itself actually started many, many years ago. The Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome virus, which is also a coronavirus that caused many cases 18 years ago, that is when this vaccine development started. They started working on a vaccine framework that would work for a coronavirus. That's when they discovered the specific part of the virus, the spike protein, that the vaccine is targeted against. So that work began 18 years ago. Now, that virus never really caused any issues outside of the Arabian Peninsula. It never reached the United States. And so our resources went to working on something else. But when this coronavirus came around, COVID-19 started, and we recognized that it was going to reach the United States, those scientists just picked up where they had left off with that framework. They already had that framework in place. They just substituted out the spike protein from the SARS-CoV-2, the current virus we're dealing with, put that in the place of what was causing the Middle Eastern Respiratory syndrome. So that framework was already in place. What we've been watching is the human trials to test the vaccine.
How is this all going to work?
First of all, there's going to be 2 doses required. So it won't be just a 1-dose vaccine. It's going to be at least a 2-dose vaccine. And the best immunity or protection will occur after the second dose. But it is most likely to decrease your risk of having moderate to severe COVID symptoms and decrease your risk of death from the virus. It will likely decrease your risk of contracting the virus, but that was not the primary endpoint. There are many scientists who believe that this will end up being a vaccine similar to the flu vaccine, and that you have to get it, you have to update it each year and get a new vaccine each year because the virus can change, it can mutate. We've already seen that even in this relatively short period of time. I know it feels like it's been forever, but for the United States, really in the pandemic since March, we've seen a couple of different versions of the virus. So we know that it can mutate and it can change. And for that reason, it is likely that you will need to be revaccinated on some type of schedule. The schedule just is not confirmed yet.
What about all the skepticism? I'm just wondering, do you know, or does the medical community know why there's so much skepticism about this vaccine and others? And it's to the point where I was reading and watching TV or something, and it said like the former presidents, President Bush and Obama and Clinton, are prepared to get the vaccine live on TV just to show people that, hey, you can go get it, it's safe.
I think that is a product of just the society that we live in. There has been increasing amounts of vaccine hesitancy over the past 10 to 20 years, even separate from the COVID vaccine. If you think about the MMR vaccine for measles, mumps, and rubella, there has been some skepticism around that vaccine and other vaccines. Any pediatrician that you talk to will tell you that over the past several years, we as pediatricians are dealing more and more with parents who are either against vaccines altogether or are significantly vaccine hesitant. There are lots of people out there who are experiencing that. And so I think this is just a byproduct of that general skepticism that is out there regarding vaccines. But at the end of the day, every person has to make their own individual decision. My recommendation would be to get the vaccine. I don't want to get COVID. I have spent many, many months trying to make sure that I do everything I can to avoid contracting this illness and avoid bringing it home to my family. And I would recommend that other people do the
Something
same.
like that. How long is all of this going to take?
I think it's going to take several months. The vaccine, while it has to be approved first, and the FDA is going to need to do an emergency use authorization to allow it to be distributed. But then it has to get to the people. It has to get to the masses. And there are issues around transporting the vaccine, about storing the vaccine. One of the versions is very sensitive to temperatures. And so we have to make sure that that is all in line. I do know that there will be sort of phases of who's going to get the vaccine first. So if you're talking about when will it be the way the flu vaccine is now, where you can walk pretty much into any pharmacy and say, hey, I want to get a flu shot today. And maybe they'll even give you a $10 gift card if you do that. I think we are a long way away from the COVID vaccine being widely available in that way. From what I have read and been told, each state will be able to make its own decisions about who gets access to the vaccine initially, but there will be some guidelines and advice from the CDC. In fact, an advisory council has already recommended that the initial allotment of the vaccine go to those in long-term care facilities, both residents of those facilities and people who work there, as well as frontline healthcare workers. And then from there, they will give additional recommendations for other people to get it. I would say you're probably looking at next summer before it's really widely available and anybody can just walk into anywhere and get the vaccine. And then even from there, because there's so much skepticism and because there are so many people who are saying they're not going to get the vaccine until it's been out for years, you're probably looking at several more months after that before you can freely move around without wearing a mask. I would imagine that even there will be some instances or some places that will want to know, have you had the COVID vaccine before they allow you to attend their functions, before they allow you to get on their cruises. We have even seen some airlines saying that you will be required to show proof of vaccination before you can get on our airline once it's widely available. So those kinds of things will be into play as well.
I think I've read where, like, once you get the vaccine, there will be like a card or something that you have that shows that you have, in some cases, you have gotten the vaccine.
Yeah, and even in the transportation industry, with airlines and cruises, they are trying to develop some type of electronic, similar to an electronic passport, but an electronic COVID sort of system where they can see whether you've had the vaccine and also whether or not you've had a recent COVID test, because we know that's a requirement right now for traveling to many international destinations from the United States. So they're trying to figure out a way to make it seamless and available so that it will follow you wherever you go.
So is this vaccine going to eventually make COVID something of the past, or if this is something that we're probably going to be dealing with, for the foreseeable future?
I think it's going to be similar to the flu, something that we will deal with for the foreseeable future, but that we will have more and more tools to deal with. I mean, if you think about, many years ago, there were no antiviral medications that were effective against the flu, and now we do have some that are effective. So progress will continue, technology will continue to evolve, medical advancements will continue to evolve. But for the foreseeable future, the next several months, we are still in a situation where everyone needs to do everything that they can to decrease the spread of this virus. And right now, that means wearing your mask, social distancing when possible and feasible, cleaning your hands frequently, and staying home if you are ill or if you have been advised to quarantine. Those are the things that we can do now. And then once the vaccine is available and your group is available to get the vaccine, really strongly consider going ahead and getting that.
I know recently we've seen stuff on social media where people just have seen, it seems like they don't think it's that big of a deal anymore. I mean, people I think we saw something on Facebook where it was a party in Memphis and it looked like hundreds of people in this tiny club. And it's just like, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. Is that frustrating for you to see, or go in the grocery store and see people without mask on or a mask on their necks or something like that?
Yes, I saw that picture of that. I don't even know what to call that party, that I will call it that super spreader event in Memphis. I mean, when I looked at that photo, that's all I could think of was, this is a super spreader event. And what will happen is that people, maybe a few people who attended that will be symptomatic and have issues, but more than likely what will happen is that several of those people will have mild to moderate symptoms, but then they will pass it on to someone else who may ultimately have more severe symptoms or even die from the virus. And it's just, again, everyone has their own level of risk tolerance, but this is also where the vaccine comes into play. At least for me, I know firsthand that I cannot control other people and I cannot make people do what is right for me. You wearing your mask protects me, but I cannot make you do that. So I'm going to go get this vaccine because I can only control myself. And I can only really protect myself as much as I can. But I mean, we've even seen other situations. There was a wedding in, I believe it was Maryland over the summer, where about 50 people attended that wedding. No masks were there. And there were a few workers who were, working the wedding. And ultimately over 100 people were infected with COVID, and 8 people died, and none of the 8 people who died actually attended the wedding. So it was sort of the second or third degree of separation. But because of this event, you had people that you didn't even know who died from it, from something that you did. And so that is frustrating as a healthcare worker, to see people just kind of throwing their hands up and being like, you know what, I'm just going to do this anyway, and I'm not really going to be concerned about my fellow human, my fellow citizen, my coworker's grandmother. I don't care about her. I'm just going to do what I want to do.
Glad we were able to have this conversation. I definitely think this will help a lot of people. Shout out your info to where people can find you. I know you're a blogger as well, among all the other hats that you wear. So let people know where they can find you.
Lots of hats. So you can find my blog at mommydoctorkisses.com. That's where I write about being a mom, being a doctor, being a wife. So I do have some things there about COVID, about Thanksgiving, about potty training, and healthy eating. So a lot of different things there. So you can always find me there. And then my professional Facebook page, you can find me at Dr. Kiana Washington.
I appreciate it. Thank you.